guys, welcome to another video. Happy New Year! 2020 is officially over. Now entered 2021 and let me just say, it's been kind of positive for me so far. I mean, all things considered, it has been relatively positive. I have a newfound obsession with macrame. I mean, I made this bag. I am so proud of myself. I never knew I had the patience and the skills to craft such a thing, but I'm so excited to be wearing this out now. And I have already started my second bag. Who knows? Maybe 2021 is the year where I just macrame everything. You know, I'm proud of myself. Thanks to my gal pals, we kind of had like a get together for a few days and just worked on this. And it was just fun. It was like a fun kind of activity, and so I had a pretty chill start to the year, but I am also very excited to, you know, venture off into the macrame world. That is not why I'm here today. Today I'm here to tell you guys about my top 5 books that I read in 2021, but 2020. As you could probably tell if you've been following me throughout 2020, which not many of you have. Let's be real. I had a pretty bad reading year in 2020. I started off initially flying through books, and then somewhere mid-year it kind of fizzled out. I kind of felt not motivated to read for some reason, and yeah, maybe I just need to pick up some binge-worthy series in the following months ahead to kind of kick me out of this reading slump. I have been reading some good books lately, so yeah, but I read a total of 23 books. Is it 22 or 23 books? Not much. I guess I'm somewhat still proud that I was reading throughout 2020, but yeah, it was a little bit disappointing. I did set my initial goal to read 50 books in 2020, and I just lowered that in the final days before the year ended. I just like reduced it down to 20, so I surpassed the challenge. Yeah, that's very sad of me to do, but whatever. So there wasn't much to choose from. Let's be honest here. It wasn't a very hard choice. So without further ado, here are my top 5 books that I read in 2020. So the first book that I have here is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I think this was the first book I read in 2020. I just really love Margaret Rogerson's stories. They're just so whimsical and beautiful. It kind of takes you on a little bit of a folk tale kind of journey. I did really like An Enchantment of Ravens by her, but I think this one I had more fun with, mainly because there was a bit more of a plot line to the story. It was more plot heavy, and it was kind of set in this Victorian inspired fantasy world. It had magical libraries and like books that were essentially alive, and it was just such a wonderful and whimsical read. And in hindsight, it probably wasn't like the best book ever. It had dark moments, but it kind of still maintained an air of fluffiness to it, and I just enjoyed it. It was kind of like a feel-good read, and yeah, it remained one of my favorites of 2020. So here it is, Sorcery of Thorns. It also has like such a beautiful and stunning cover. Is she writing any more stories? Do we have an upcoming book by her? Because I need more books by Margaret Rogerson, that's for sure. The next book I have here is definitely No Questions Asked. I really enjoyed this trilogy as a whole, even though it's kind of like a guilty pleasure. Like, it's not really a guilty pleasure because it is a good series, but I just think that it's kind of like, I know that some aspects of this series is pretty bad, but I overall liked it still for some odd reason, and that is The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the sequel to The Cruel Prince. If you watched my earlier wrap-ups in 2020, you would know that I had like a Holly Black month where I was just reading mostly her books, and it was just such a wonderful time. And like I said, The Cruel Prince, it was definitely hit or miss for a lot of people. Not a lot of people liked The Cruel Prince, and then there's like real mad fans for that series. I would say I'm not a crazy fan of the series, but I really enjoyed it. It was very binge-worthy. I honestly read the trilogy in a very short span of time, so it's very readable, it's very fast-paced, it doesn't meander on like descriptive writing at all, it's just very straight to the point, and it was just a fun time. It's set in a world where everyone's like somewhat messed up. It's set in like this fairy realm, but the fairies are actually like kind of pretty evil. So yeah, you're following a human girl who lives in this fairy realm, and there's definitely like a lot of political maneuvers and just backstabbing, and just it was a fun ride. And I think out of the trilogy, The Wicked King was my favorite. It just had a lot more stakes involved, there was a lot more tension, and also like the Jude and Carden relationship was just at its peak in this one, and I don't know, I loved it. I did do a wrap up, and I'm currently editing like a review for The Wicked King, which I will link somewhere here once it's uploaded. But The Wicked King, if you've read The Cruel Prince and you're like a bit iffy about continuing on with the series, I definitely think you should read The Wicked King. I definitely think you should continue on reading, and I guess if you don't like The Wicked King, then you can kind of stop from there. But trust, it's a fun time. It's a wild ride. The next book that I have here is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I read this for, well, did I read this for a readathon? I believe this was a pick for the Asian readathon. Was it the Asian readathon? Yeah, I think it was for the Asian readathon. I don't think I had the chance to finish it during that time, but I ended up continuing to read it the following month afterwards, and so I ended up finishing it. It's Celeste Ng. It's, I don't know what it is with Celeste Ng, but I always love her books, even though this is like the second book that I've read by her. I think she's only written 2 books. Am I correct about that? I don't know. Anyway, I loved her previous book and I love this book. My relationship with Celeste Ng's stories are very interesting, because when you initially read like the synopsis of what the story is about, it is not for me. I am so not interested. But after reading Everything I Never Told You by her, is that what it's called? That is, yes, that is what it's called. Yeah, so ever since I read that, I've been very much intrigued and interested to see what she brings out next. And so when I picked this book up, even though, you know, the plot line didn't really intrigue me that much, I knew it was by Celeste Ng, and I've heard so many good things about it. There's an Amazon Prime like series based on this book, and so yeah, it got a lot of buzz. And yeah, I have nothing negative to say. There are parts, I suppose, that can be a little bit slow, but there is this air of mystery throughout the book that just kept me engaged. I think initially, like the first chunk was a bit hard to get into, but once things started to get revealed and there were like plot twists, I wouldn't say plot twists, but like more things were revealed, because I think initially there's a lot of things that are unsaid at the beginning of the story, so you're kind of unraveling this mystery that's happening in this suburban area. It gets pretty intense, pretty dramatic, I suppose, but it was good. And it has like subtle commentary on like classism and racism and just all these other like topics that just make this book so much better. It kind of makes you think and ponder about the story well after you finished it, and so I very much appreciate this book, and I had a fun time. Even though the setting is boring, let's be real, it's set in like this clean-cut neighborhood, and it's just following like the neighborhood people in this town. Not that intriguing when you first think about what it's about, but once you get into it, I'm telling you, it's a fun ride. Well, is it a fun ride? That's not really how I should describe Little Fires Everywhere. It's just intense. It's intense. And yeah, I would highly recommend. It was one of my favorite books of 2020. The next book I have is Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I do not know why this book has not gotten enough buzz around it. Marie Lu's other books really do get like a lot more hype than this one did. In fact, there's only like a handful of booktubers that I saw like mentioning this book in 2020, and it makes me sad. It was such a wonderful read. It's kind of like a dark whimsy. It's kind of like almost magical realism. These kids are like living in a time period that's kind of a little bit oppressive and just very hard to live in. So they kind of escape into this other world, and whether it's real or not, I guess that's for the reader to decide. It's based around the Mozart siblings, and it was just such a beautiful read. Beautiful and kind of sad because we know in history how the Mozart siblings kind of turned out. But yeah, I don't know. It's a nice kind of insight and a nice take on the Mozart siblings. The Kingdom of Back is apparently, according to the internet, it's something that the Mozart siblings really did talk about. They kind of made up stories while they were going through like long journeys to like different cities and stuff. They kind of made up stories about the Kingdom of Back to just pass time. So yeah, it's a very interesting take on that, and it was just so magical. Like the language was so beautifully written. Marie Lu kind of incorporated like musical terms, because this is about music, into her writing, and it was just so stunning, so beautiful. And I would hope more people pick it up. It's kind of like meshing realities together, like stuff that happens in this other world is kind of reflected of what's happening in the real world. It's just so magical. I did say this in my reading vlogs when I was reading this. It definitely gave me like Pan's Labyrinth vibes, in the sense where they're constantly going in and out of like the real world, which is our world, and to like a fantasy world. It's beautiful. I love it. I definitely want to do like a full-length review on this one. I just really want more people to read this book so I can talk about it and just have a discussion on it. It's beautiful. I love it. It was one of my favorite reads, hence why it's in my top 5 books of 2020. Okay, lucky last on this list is a Stephen King book. By the way, this is in no particular order. I won't say that this was like the best book that I read this year. This is not in any order. With that being said, the final book that I have here is Misery by Stephen King. I finally read a full-length novel by Stephen King. I think previously I've read like short stories by him, but this has been on my TBR for so long. I mean, this physical copy I purchased in 2020, but like the story Misery I've been wanting to read for about a decade, and I finally did it, and it did not disappoint. I'm so obsessed. Oh my gosh. There are parts that were a little bit slow. Well, if you guys don't know about Misery, it's basically about this guy who's a famous writer, and one day he wakes up from a car crash and is in this strange lady's house, and he basically can't go anywhere, and she kind of tells him that she is his biggest fan, and from there horrible things ensue, as Stephen King stories tend to be, and I just enjoyed the heck out of this. The #1 fan, whose name is Annie, she's terrifying. She's probably my favorite villain that I've read about in recent years, and probably will remain one of my favorite villains. Oh my gosh, she's so unpredictable and so crazy, but I loved her. Basically, while our main character is trapped inside Annie's home, she's forcing him to write another book in the series that he had just ended, and was like, okay, he's gonna move on to other things, and he kind of put aside this series that he was very famous for, but she was not happy with the ending and just forcing him to write another book in the series. The parts of the book that kind of slowed my reading experience down a little bit was when we go into the story, like the Misery books that he's typing up for Annie, and I was not really that interested. I was kind of interested in what was happening in Paul's immediate surroundings, I suppose, instead of like the story that he's writing. So those parts were a little bit slow, but everything else, oh my gosh, I enjoyed the heck out of. I am so excited to read more things by Stephen King. I know he's a bit hit or miss for a lot of people, but he has a huge fan base. He's such a prolific author. He pumps out so many books a year that he's like a superhuman when it comes to writing. And so yeah, I love this book. I'm so excited to read more things by him. I think I might pick up Carrie next. I was so happy and so like shocked at a lot of moments that man, I would just say go into this with no expectations, but it's going to be a crazy ride. It's gonna mess you up. Anyway, I really enjoyed this book. Highly recommend. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna read more things by Stephen King in the near future. So those are it, guys. Those were my top books that I read in 2020. I know a lot of people do like top 10s, but because I read less than 50 books, I thought maybe I should just reduce that number to top 5. And yeah, but regardless, I love the books that I've mentioned today, and I would highly recommend you check these books out if you haven't yet. If you have, let me know how you felt about these books, whether you liked it or didn't like them, and tell me why. Even though you probably won't sway my opinions at all if you didn't like any of these books, because I really like them, and I hope you guys enjoy them too if you have not yet picked these books up. Okay, I'm rambling now. I need to go. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys had a fantastic New Year's. Continue to stay safe, wash your hands, put on a mask, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!